told you a while back I was going to tell you the story about old Joe that I'd written, so I'm going to do it now. Old Joe. Reg Roberts steered the barge close to the towpath of the canal, and Patrice, his son, got off to steady Blackie and secure the barge for the night. "I'll secure the horse at old Joe's inn, Dad," Patrice called, "and I'll check that it's all right with the owners, okay?" "Okay, son," Reg called back, "but don't be long. I don't like you being out on a weird, misty night like tonight." Patrice shivered and turned in the direction of old Joe's inn, telling Blackie to walk on as he led him. A dim light was flickering from the front room, but the first thing Patrice did was to find his way to the stables, so that he could groom and secure Blackie for the night. The narrow alley that Patrice had to lead Blackie through was overshadowed on one side by the inn itself, and on the other side by tall trees, thick and bushy, moving slowly in the almost non-existent breeze. Patrice glanced into the trees now and then, half expecting something to jump out at him. Blackie was getting restless as a mist began to form itself around their ankles. The mist got no worse, but Blackie grew more tense and began to shy in the direction of the inn. Patrice decided it must be the shadows that had the trees leaps at them, causing it. He grabbed Blackie's harness with both hands to calm him down, but the usually steady old horse would not accept that everything was all right. Just then Patrice noticed a figure ahead of them, but he hadn't seen him arrive. Suddenly Blackie grew worse and began to rear. The figure moved forward. It looked like a stable boy, about 19, the same age as Patrice. "Need help?" he asked politely, with a smile that somehow didn't seem right. "Yes, please," Patrice replied, and then to the horse, "Blackie, calm down. It's only a stable boy." "Look, I'll take him," the stable boy offered as he took Blackie's harness. "You go and tell old Joe that you're here." "Right, thanks." Patrice turned and made his way back through the alley of mist and shadows as quickly as he could. He then turned and walked round the front of the inn to the main doors, not noticing a broken beer bottle speckled with blood as he passed it. The main doors were open, so Patrice entered quietly and whispered, "Old Joe?" There was no answering call, so Patrice began to walk in the direction of the room he had first seen with the flickering light. The door to this room was slightly ajar, so Patrice just peeped through the crack. He could hear something creaking and squeaking, and then he spotted the old man. He was sitting in his rocking chair, squeaking as he rocked back and forth, reading an old volume by the light of the only flickering illumination in the room. Patrice pushed the door fully open and cleared his throat as he tried to swallow his fear. "Excuse me, are you old Joe?" he managed. The old man turned his head very slowly to look at the speaker. Suddenly Joe smiled a strange smile. "I am here, youngster. What do you want then, boy?" Patrice began to stammer with nerves, and old Joe invited him to come in and take a seat next to him. "Now," old Joe advised when Patrice had cautiously done so, "speak slowly and take deep breaths." Patrice began again. "Well, we're passing through, staying the night in our barge. I just popped in to say that I've put the horse in your stables for the night. Is that all right?" Of course," Joe dismissed lightly, and stood up to walk for the few paces to where Patrice was sitting. Patrice decided Joe was a friendly sort of chap, but strange and lonely with it. "We don't get many people coming through fair leagues nowadays, I'm afraid, and it's nice to see such a pleasant young face," Joe was saying. "What of a family are you?" "Yes," Patrice looked up into the old man's face, and most of his fear gone. The man had a crooked smile, lonely eyes, and greying hair to go with the wrinkles. "My sister and my parents are in the on a barge. Unfortunately, my father's a drunkard." Joe's eyebrows rose notably, and his smile grew inquisitive. "Oh, is he? We have cures for drunkards. I'll show you some, but not just now." Patrice frowned, although he wasn't quite sure why. "Yes, that would be great. Well, thanks," and he stood up. "But I'd better be getting back to the barge now. I need a good night's sleep." Joe's smile widened. "Yes, my dear. Keep well." Patrice tried not to make his exit look too rushed. He didn't want to offend the old man, after all his hospitality. Hadn't he offered to sort out a cure for Reggie's drunkenness? But Patrice's fear was returning. Was it the rising mist? The sanctuary of the barge was only too welcome to Patrice. His parents and Amy he found seated in the small lounge area. "Go all right, son?" his father asked him as he came into the room. "Yes, Dad, Joe's a very pleasant man." Millie, Patrice's mother, was pleased at this news. Oh, good, he's getting the all stay then. Yes, Patrice replied, filling in with, it seems not many people come this way anymore. He must hardly see a soul. Amy's shrill voice could be heard. Don't know about you, but I'm ready for bed, but it was ignored. Poor man, Millie was saying. I bet he gets really lonely. But Reg was tired of this talk. Standing up, he said, come on, come and help us lift the beer barrels on. Oh, Dad, Patrice complained. Not again. Reg had obviously already had a few drinks while Patrice was out, but he insisted that the boy help him lug another barrelful into the lounge to be displayed in pride of place next to Reg's wooden chair. Whenever he wanted, he could just refill his glass, until all that was left was another empty beer barrel. The females of the family helped by removing the old beer barrel, while Reg and Patrice were fetching the full one. And this was happening now. But as Millie had her back to the window with one end of the barrel, Amy was facing the window with the other end. Suddenly Amy screamed and dropped her end of the barrel. She put her hands over her mouth and her eyes grew very wide. Millie stared at Amy, then carefully lowered her end of the barrel and faced over to Amy where she stood frozen. She put her arms around her young teenage daughter, and as she did so, she turned to face the window and look, but just before she did so, the face disappeared beneath the sill. What was it, Amy? The girl's mother asked in a shaky voice. What did you see? Amy blinked. There was a face at the window, she gasped. There was a horrible face at the window. It was then that Reg and Patrice rushed in to find the two females, standing like this. Reg was concerned. What's wrong with Amy, Mill? She says she saw a face at the window, Millie answered bluntly. Patrice was all for the logical explanation. It was probably just Joe checking to see if we were all right. Don't worry, Amy, he comforted, taking a seat. He's a really friendly old man. Amy shivered. But he looked so gruesome, really gruesome. His face was all marred. He looked like he was melting, and he was staring at me. He held a broken bottle with blood in it. He was drunk. It was horrible. Amy shivered again and began to sob. Patrice relieved his mother of putting her arm round the girl and took it over himself. Come on, sis, time for bed, he encouraged. Reg stood with his hands on his hips. Oi, what about my barrel? I'll leave it for once more, can't you, Dad? Patrice snapped. Just let's all get in bed and forget this whole thing. Beer and faces at windows. The family all shared one bedroom, where Patrice and Amy shared one bunk and the parents shared another. This was the only furniture in the whole room. Actually, Reg and Millie thought it was about time to invest in a double bed. Patrice helped Amy off with her shoes and into bed. They always wore their clothes in bed because they didn't possess night clothes, and besides, the barge was very draughty. Eventually, they were all in bed, asleep, but about an hour later, Amy woke and could not get back to sleep. She looked at the ceiling for what seemed like hours, but was only minutes. But probably only just minutes. Then she lay on her side and tried to catch it, but it didn't work. She began to toss and turn to get comfortable, but couldn't. She could hear the rustling of the wind in the trees and began to remember the disgusting face she had seen at the lounge window earlier in the evening, and the fear rose within her. She glanced nervously at the window, which was very close to the head of her bunk, and sat up sharply with a scream. The face was at the bedroom window. She screamed again and again began to struggle out of the bed, top bunk and where she slept, and sat on Patrice's bed to shake him awake. Pat, wake up. It's that face, Pat, she shrieked. What's up? Pat frowned as he awoke. Amy's eyes were wide. That face, Pat, look. Pat's eyes darted to the window and automatically grew larger. My goodness, he exclaimed. It's all Joe, right? But he doesn't look too good, does he? Indeed he didn't, for Joe's face was a mass of blood. Patrice slowly got out of bed, and Amy watched as he sidled over to his Mum and Dad's bunk in the darkness. She turned to glance back at the window, just as Joe pressed his mutilated features up against the glass and slid downwards into a crouching position, his staring eyes fixed on Amy the whole time. Amy screamed again and covered her mouth as she heaved. Patrice shook his father as quickly as he could, as he was the nearest on the bottom bunk. Dad, Patrice was near panic. The face, look at the window slowly. Reg did so instead. It's Joe, Patrice continued, but he seems to be melting away. Reg shook his head in disbelief and climbed out of bed. My bones, Patrice, Reg cursed. Wait with Amy, she looks petrified. Patrice walked back over to his bunk, finding that his legs were shaking, and they felt like jelly. and sat at the furthest end of the bunk away from the window, motivating Amy to sit by him, which she quickly did. Patrice put his arm round his sister, and she hid her face in his chest. And that is where I'm going to leave it, and I will continue it in the next video.